Hello everybody, my name is Rosencrantz and this is Guildenstern and we are very much still alive.
Just kidding, it's Aaron and Ari here. Welcome back to another episode of a podcast where two theatre people who are very unqualified in theatreness talk theatre.
We've been doing things.
We have.
Which is nice. Actually good fun.
Got through some stuff last night, actually, wasn't it? Yesterday.
Yesterday.
It was yesterday. Or the day before yesterday.
I don't know what days are.
Yes, cricket was yesterday.
Actually, it was the day before.
We'll tell you about that as well
That'll
later.
be later. That'll be the bonus episode for those of you listening on Spotify.
2 days ago, we did some script writing.
Yes, we went to rehearse, but we were at the start of the rehearsal. We were like, well, let's read over the scene that we just did and make sure that we have the stage directions in. So we figured we'd write the blocking into the stage directions to remind us of what we were doing, and we just kind of kept doing that. And then we got on a roll, and we did it for the entire script, and also refined the entire script, and now have like a really solid second draft.
Yeah. And when you say we went to rehearse, that implies that we didn't rehearse. I'd say this was still very much rehearsing.
No, true. We didn't do any blocking in a space.
Or we didn't create. Well, I mean, we
blocked in our heads.
Yes, kind of. I mean, we were still like moving. I just feel like it wasn't like, focusing on one scene only. We actually went through the entirety of the script, which is a fair chunk more than we'd anticipated looking at. I think we had, when we started out, we had a plan to sort of go scene by scene or 2 scenes by 2 scenes or whatever. And I think we realized how infeasible maybe that is because things can change. Like we could have gotten to scene whatever, I don't know how many scenes we've got. Scene towards the end and realized that, hey, we actually kind of need something earlier on that's going to make this make a lot more sense.
Yeah, and we were talking about how, because a lot of the second part of the show is kind of it's lesser than the first part. We would start rehearsing the first part and then go back and write part to the second part. And we were like, oh, well, actually, maybe we should write the second part first then, which is what we ended up doing, which is really good, actually. So now, like, as opposed to saying that we have at least half of a solid script, we now have a full solid script.
Yeah,
which is really good, yeah.
And I think because we now have a full script, it's a lot easier to sort of know how we intend to block as well, and there's no sort of uncertainty about, but what if we need this to happen later and stuff. Like, we do have a full second draft now, so we can start moving it more in the space without having uncertainties about whether or not this is what we really want to be happening, or if this is really the type, like, the characters have been fleshed out to a point where it's like, it's probably not going to change much more, which is really cool. And we got through that quite quickly, I'd say. Like, we sort of sat down and it just sort of, it happened quite organically, as far as writing and getting it through and reading it through as well in our voices, when with the exception of the ending monologue and a couple other little story monologues that we've kind of left a bit, just because I think it's better if we write that. We don't need to write that while we're both together. It's really easy to write dialogue while we're together because we can kind of just improv into it. Whereas writing a monologue just seems like a waste of time while we're both together, because it kind of is something that needs to come out of your head or my head.
But in the benefit of that, some of the monologues which I mean, especially the final monologue, which I mean, we kind of workshopped together before you write it, which I also think is really beneficial. Of like,
I agree.
Being like, well, what do we think we need from this monologue? Well, why don't we jot down just some ideas and stuff, and then you can take all of that back with you and be like, okay, now I'll craft this into what I think it will end up being, which I think is really good. Yeah,
because I mean, we start with that monologue. I mean, Aaron started writing it and kind of like
I just did
a couple of sentences,
thing,
and then I think you kind of sort of realized it's probably better to come from me rather than you, because it's me that's speaking it. And then I sort of was like, okay, great, well, now I'm going to have to write it. So I think I gave myself some time. This was several weeks ago now. And was like, all right, let me try and write it. And I sort of added like 2 sentences to what Aaron already had. And then realized we need to work out what we're trying to say and the message that we're trying to put out from this play before we go and write the closing monologue. Because as cliche as like a final monologue is, like, it is a thing, and we do kind of, we can't just have it be like you showed me that bit.
That's the bit in the Oh Hello show. For those of you who have seen that, it's on Netflix. It's funny, but they do this bit where they say, like, they parody the way in which a lot of contemporary theater ends its shows, where somebody will get out onto a stage and it'll be like a harsh spotlight, and they'll just do like one kind of throwaway line, like, waiter, I'll have 1 more root beer, please. And then the lights will fade, and that's the end of the show. And you're like, wait, hang on, was that the end of the show? That's the part I didn't show you afterwards. That's us, but afterwards, where they go.
I'll go watch it.
It's the kind of line where the audience members goes, is that the end of the play? And you're like,
So we don't want that.
yeah, we don't want that, like, kind of, unnecessarily metaphoric final line that sums up everything that the show talks about. And everyone goes, that's the end? Oh, okay. Yeah, great, wow, yeah. And, like, we've been in shows where that's happened, and, like, I think it works really well. Because, like, it keeps the audience being like, oh, wow, like, that's powerful. We're still in the moment, which is really good. But there's always that awkward, like, yeah. I love it. It's really funny.
And then the other alternative is sort of like a long rambling monologue.
True.
And so I think we're trying to break even between those two things, where it's not like a 3-hour monologue.
Yeah, no.
Or like a monologue the same duration of the...
Yeah, and considering a lot of there's not really many monologues throughout the show anyway. It's very much like, we were saying that when you were writing anyway, and we were kind of bouncing ideas, and you were like, well, I don't know if we should have it so directly like an aside, because that breaks the fourth wall, which we haven't done at all the whole show. And maybe that's too much, like that's too conventional. We need to like keep it within the world of the play. And we have through that anyway with the monologue without spoiling anything. Like it works consistently, but we have to remember that like this isn't a come to the front of the audience spotlight, speak to them kind of
thing.
That's
what I think, jarring. You sort of pitched it to me as that. And I think I was less sort of inclined to fall into that, mainly because then there is this expectation that the monologue kind of like it is like a good schmoop summary of the whole play, exactly. And I don't think it really is a schmoop summary of the whole play. It's more of like a, hey, this is a thing. Yeah, it's more just like an ending. Yeah. And so I'm glad we've kind of made it not. Yeah, that was a good call on your part. I'm glad it's not. Oh, I mean, again, this could change. We could decide. True. You know what? We really do need. The hush spotlight. A stand and sing to close. We need a whole cabaret number. I need to. I mean, we could ease into that with the other thing that you do at the ending without spoiling anything. Anyway, but anyway. I think the goal we decided was to try and like toe the line between here's a giant monologue and here's a one-liner. Yeah. And also here are the themes of the show. And here is a definitive end kind of thing. Because I do think with ours, it would be really nice to have some kind of definitive close, even if it is an indefinitive way. No, there needs to be closure to the show. We can't leave it open-ended. I think it's especially considering how the show ends, it needs to have a very like it's almost like a breathe, like a sigh. Cathartic release. Sigh out. I don't know, we'll see if we can achieve that. Well, that's it's easy in theory, isn't it? I guess we'll see what happens later on. It's easy in theory, or it's difficult in theory? No, it's easy in theory. In conceptualization. Yeah. So it's harder when we try to do it for real, which is fine. But yeah, that's been our writing process, which would be pretty much like, I'd say our writing process has almost come to a close, with the exception of a few niggly things. Yes, true. Additions. Probably small stuff. Our actual, like, the creative writing process is pretty much done. The story's there, the characters are there. Yeah, and the whole plot of it is closed, basically. It's just more the actual dialogue, which only there's the 2 stories and the monologue, which need to be refined. Other than that, it's fine. And it was really interesting because, I mean, obviously you wouldn't write like this if you weren't going to put on and direct the show yourself and be in the show yourself. I was going to talk about that as well. Yeah, it's really beneficial, I think, especially for us, knowing that we're going to direct the show and we're going to be in the show to write all of the stage directions and basically plot out the entire show, and so that we can basically see it in our heads, where we're putting the show itself into a written form. And I think that is beneficial. I mean, that's like, it breaks all the rules of what you are taught as a writer. I was going to comment on how much I dislike sometimes getting a script where it has like extensive stage directions, or it has like she cries, or she, stares dramatically off into the distance. Or like even like a description on how to say the line, like sheepishly or something. I'm like, but what if I don't? What if this doesn't feel sheepish to me? Kind of thing. I like finding it a little bit more impulsively or organically. So, when we I noticed us slowly getting into that zone where I was like, oh, we're literally writing how we say some of the lines, like, which is kind of like a big no-go for me. I try and avoid that at all costs. Yeah, but you're speaking them. Because I'm speaking it, I have every right to have written down that, you know what, I really liked the decision I made there. With whatever, in whatever context it was. It's not like someone else is making the choice for you. You're just writing down your thing to remember for later. Yeah. So it was very much, it's interesting though, because, I feel like, I don't know how you sort of do your blocking and stuff, but I definitely used to. I definitely don't anymore. Maybe I should get back to it, but like, I used to write down all my blocking in pencil down the side, and I would draw little boxes.
I
with
just
X's.
draw boxes and X's.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
really
yeah.
all
But
I do.
and then I
Nothing
would
major.
really like if we go look at any of my scripts over there, like they're full of notes. Like,
Yeah.
full, like to the point where I was like, how did I even read my lines? There are that many
Yeah.
scribbles. And I barely do that anymore. Like, I don't think I barely highlight my lines half the time.
Yeah.
It's just like, I don't know, I've just forgotten that I can kind of give myself that kind of notes. But it's like we're doing that, but into the actual, which is kind of cool.
Which I think is
Keeps
useful.
it clean.
I mean, we could also draw out the blocking, which is another thing. But if we're gonna do the blocking anyway, I feel like that's not necessary per se.
No.
But I think it was good, and I think it's beneficial for us to do that. And I like to do that with scripts that I know that I'm going to direct, because it makes it easier for me than as a director. Whereas if the script is vague unnecessarily, and I knew what I was trying to do originally, I'd be like, oh, if only I'd just written down what I had already envisioned as a reminder. But you have to be quite conscious of, if we ever, like, let's say we write something that isn't for us, we need to be able to not do that. And also understand that, like, the choices that we make are not our choices to make.
Yeah.
So, for example, let's say we do have dialogue or blocking, and we go, I would do this, but if we're sending this to somebody else, they might not have the same impulse, and so we shouldn't we should make that choice for them, because of how much it pisses us off.
Exactly.
You know?
I know. Oh, yeah. No, and I think I'd be really interested to give this script to someone else.
Yeah.
Or to give the script to another director, or get a pair of outside eyes, definitely at some point, maybe later in the process. Well, we'll definitely get a pair of outside eyes at some point. But from a more outside standpoint, literally giving the blank script, like, to someone or to a director, and just seeing what their take on it is, because we've got a very strong take on it and a very shared image, I think, of what, for the most part. I think there are still points where I'm like, we're differing in what we see,
which is
that's
the way it is, that's
but it'd be really interesting to see how someone else took it from like not knowing anything about the intent. So maybe that's something to think about as an interesting experiment, having a blank version of it, like devoid of all our direction, and
which we were talking about. I mean, we were raising. I mean, now that the script is finished and we had the talk of like that we can show it to other people now. Basically, the script is at a finished enough state, regardless of the couple of monologues that need to be fixed up. Like, if we start pitching it to people to get money or to get it done elsewhere,
pitching it to people to get money, looking for grants
and other locations, which is a possibility. But that being said, we'd have to show that other version of the script.
Yeah,
we wouldn't be able to show them the current version of it, which is fine. And if that decision is made, we do need to alter the script, which is fine.
In saying that, though, it's not like the way we've written it isn't like counter to any script conventions.
Yeah.
Like a lot of scripts have it like to that end.
True.
Like, there are scripts that like she picks up the mug in her right hand and sips delicately before placing it back down. The mug is floral print and it's onto a table. Like there is like that is a convention.
Yeah, and I guess if we're pitching it with the understanding that we are also going to be the ones in it and directing it, then I think
which
it
is
probably
what it would be.
Which
it's
is
not
true.
Like we're handing it off just
no,
yet.
Not yet. Maybe after we've done it a couple of times.
Yeah.
But I mean, but also on the other, like, I mean, not to say that anything is better or worse. I mean, of course, the wonderful thing about this art form is how varied it is. But you have the other side of that, which is, oh man, I can't believe I'm saying Shakespeare on a theatre podcast. But it's Shakespeare, and how like kind of.
Well, you're going to talk about Brecht for a second.
No. We've already talked about Brecht. I don't know if we've referenced. Sure,
we haven't talked about Brecht for a very long time.
That's true.
Brecht was like episode 2.
No, but I mean, in terms of like stage direction, the way in which Shakespeare has very little, and all of the direction comes within the dialogue itself, I think is very talented. Which is, that's to say both of those things.
So just be more like Shakespeare, alright?
Yeah, that's true. We should just write like
Shakespeare.
Write like Will.
Will.
I call him Will.
Like,
I'm on first name basis with Shakespeare. He's my friend. My friend Will,
He'll be our outside eyes. He'll come in, give us a look, give us a bit of a tweak, have a few words to say.
Hey, yo, Will, do you mind just giving us a read real quick? It's like, there's so much stage direction. It's like,
get rid of it.
Doth thou knowest the conventions of thy screenplay? The writing is bad. And I'm like, thank you, Shakespeare. You couldn't have said that better myself.
Stage play. You said screenplay.
Did I?
Yeah.
I meant stage play. I don't know.
Tell us about your screenplay.
Script. So
look at that segue. Did I not just segue so well?
Not bad. I've got screenplays on the mind. So I finished my Star Wars one,
Woo!
which is fun. Yeah, good for me. So I was writing it, and I hit the 75 pages, and I had 5 pages left to write for the day. And I was pretty much at the kind of, like at the end of the movie where there's the wrap up bit, right? and I was like, okay, how am I going to stretch this out for 15 pages? Because I wanted to hit 90. And it's weird because this is usually the opposite of the problem that I have, which is not... It's how do I make this longer? Usually my intention is how do I make it shorter. But I realized, like, I wrote, like, maybe 2.5 pages, and I was like, no, this needs to end. I can't, like, just
drag
I can't drag
pages.
it. And I'm not going to do a... We talked last episode about multiple endings and how movies can be too long. So I figured I'd just, finish the movie here, and then I could always go back and add more scenes earlier, because I'd already had some more ideas. Now that I finished, I have a full kind of like start and end point. I can go back and add anything else. So I finished that, which was really good. And then I'd taken a break from it for a bit, and I was like, I won't write this for maybe a week or two. Just let it sit for a bit, maybe do some revisions every now and again, and not write some more scenes. And in the meantime, I was looking at more projects to do, and I have a few currently that I'm kind of bouncing back and forth between a play that I want to finish, a screenplay, and also the Star Wars one. And those are like the three things that I'm bouncing, depending on what I'm kind of feeling at any specific time. But I started writing this thing that I started a long, long time ago, maybe 3 or 4 years now, when, I think I was in high school when I started writing it. But it was this, like, it's this cheesy 80s inspired, like, sports drama about a bunch of, like, 17-year-old kids who play video games, and, like, they get into, like, the esports team. Because I haven't seen, like, a good show that's kind of... And like, I think it's a fun, because there's a lot of competitive nature to esports, and like we don't see that kind of, like, I think Cobra Kai is a great example of the fact that people are still really interested and who still enjoy
Definitely
the kind
haven't
of...
seen it, sorry.
I have only seen a couple of seasons, but it's popular. It's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, it is.
It's
I've heard a lot about it.
That people are still into this, like, kind of very feel-good, inspirational, beating the bad guy type storytelling, which is fun. So it's kind of like that, just a bunch of kids who play games, and they kind of put things together. And I wrote, like, the first scene and a half back in high school, and I was rereading it, and I'm like, oh, I really like the way this opens, and so I kept writing to try and hit my 5 pages for the day. And I got, like, 2.5 pages in, and I'm like, I have no idea where it goes from here. And I hit that block, and I was like, I don't know what to do next. So I stopped, and I was like, do I just stop writing for the day? And I was like, no, I've set this goal up. I need to keep this consistent, because if I stop one day, I'm just not gonna keep writing. Which was funny, because the day that we wrote the script together, I went down that night to write more, and as soon as I opened my writing software, it was like, you've wrote 19 pages today, and I was like, you know what, that's done. I don't need to write anything else. That counts.
Well, that's reasonable.
Which I feel like that does count. I did a big day of writing, which was funny.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I got to that point, and I was like, I need to push this. I need to finish this 5 pages. So I just kind of was like, well, what would they say next? Okay, fine, I'll do this. And I was writing some dialogue, and I got to the end of the scene, and then suddenly I looked over, and it was 5.2 pages, and I was like, great, okay, done. And I hadn't really finished the scene yet, so I was like, okay, I'll just write down the next bit of dialogue that I'll write tomorrow. And then I was like, oh, but then that means that dialogue then sets up the fact that they're going to do this next. And I was like, okay, then they do this, and then this, and then they do this. And then I was like, then I was in that flow state. I'm like, oh, great. And so I just wrote like a massive paragraph of like the plot structure basically for the next, few days most likely of what I'm going to end up writing. And I'm like, oh, great. So this is the point. But it was really good because it's great that what this habit has set up now is like, I would have stopped writing before I started doing this and set this kind of habit for myself. At that point, I would have been like, I don't know what happens next. I'm going to stop writing.
Whatever.
And then I wouldn't have come back to it for ages.
Yeah.
But the fact that I'm now consciously making an effort to try and go through, and then from that still being rewarded with, oh, now I actually know what's going on. Sometimes it does, this is work. As much as it is fun, you do need to put effort into it, and you need to like push yourself to go further than what you kind of want yourself to do, because from there you can come up with more ideas and more things like that. So it's actually really good, and I'm excited to see how it kind of also translates into our rehearsal process.
That's true.
And I think it's really good that this has kind of set a new kind of motivation for the way in which I think about like working in creative fields, because before, you love to think of this thing as I only do it if I know what I'm doing and because I love it, and if it ever stops being fun. But there has to be those moments of struggle for there to be more moments of revelation. And you can't have those higher moments of revelation without that struggle beforehand. Like if I hadn't have been stuck there, I wouldn't have felt so good when I figured out what I wanted to do.
That's true.
So I think the moral of the story is push yourself further all the time, and don't try and stop when it's easy, because otherwise you just won't get things done.
Yeah. But I think there's also like an interesting, like a good thing to say about sort of not forcing extra, like not trying to push for like page limits or word limits, or setting yourself like mathematical limits to creativity.
Yeah.
Like, I think you were so right in stopping, and I'm really glad you stopped
Yeah.
at whatever 80
Yeah, 80
pages or whatever
pages
it
as
was,
opposed to
rather
90.
than trying to pump out an extra 10
Yeah.
for what?
For no reason.
For
Because
10
I wanted
pages
to
of
hit
trash
the...
ending dialogue
yeah.
or whatever. Like,
It would have been
yeah. So I think while you have set sort of a 5 pages a day habit, I think that's a lot better than setting a 90-page goal for a script.
For a script.
And I think a lot of people, especially when they're younger, are really like, well, I know I was, I'm speaking for too many people, but definitely when I was younger, it was like, oh, the more I write, the better.
Yeah.
Like, it's quantity over quality.
Yeah.
If I write 90 pages, it's going to be so much better than if I write 5 really, really, really crash hot, like, pages. And I don't even know what really, like, broke that down for me. It was just, I think it was just the realization that, like, why waffle for so long when you can say what you want to say so simply in much less. I think that's a really important thing to sort of remember as a writer, that, like, you don't have to fill time or space or words or and especially like in things like university, like I found it really hard to hit page limits or word limits or stay under them sometimes. But, like, you know, I don't think any kind of limitation should be placed upon creativity. Bold statement, I know, but, like,
but I mean,
I think it's really unfair sometimes. It's like,
true.
you have to write a 1,000-word short story.
But I do think that, okay, I don't think, I agree with you in terms of word limits, but I do think that restrictions on creativity can breed more creativity. You know, like, I feel like if I told you need to write a story and it can only be 100 words, like, do your best. Yeah. You know, like, I feel like that's hard. But that hardness that challenge makes you go, well, how do I make these 100 words count, for example? And like, that's not to say that I don't like blanket, like, overall every single bit of creative needs to have this restriction and set yourself challenges. But the thing is, you need to be conscious about the challenges you're setting yourself, rather than having someone else go, you need to do this. It should be like, oh, I want to challenge myself, so I should write 5 pages a day.
Same with, like, due dates. Like, they can be real, and I know we are quite lax with our sort of, like, timeline, but like, there are things that we've said, okay, by this point this needs to have happened, and I think, like, there needs to be those there needs to be that kind of structure, like, we do have to have this done. But sometimes, you know, due dates, especially, like, relating to assessments, but also, like, in the creative process, can be really constricting, because it's like, at this point you can't change the script anymore, and you're like, what? But, you know, 2 weeks later, suddenly there's this massive revelation. You're like, I really, really need to include that. And it's about having a flow state in creativity, I think, and being able to sort of adapt to what comes, and sometimes institutions and stuff can prevent that.
Get in the way.
But also, sometimes they can't. Sometimes they really help, you know? Like
There's
I say,
benefits and negatives
creating
to
structure
both.
and creating, you know, the ability to sort of pump something out in a couple of weeks, being able to create a short, you know, 100, 200 word story, you know, or be able to write something in 5 minutes. You know, setting writing challenges.
True,
I think those, like, we've done some in the past where you write something for you spend 15 minutes just writing on a prompt. I think those are some of, like, the most beneficial writing experiences I've had, just because, you know, you don't have the time to judge yourself for ideas. I think sometimes when you have so long to write, like, let's say you get set a prompt and you have 3 weeks to write on it, you spend those 3 weeks judging the idea you've had. Whereas when you have 15 minutes, there's no time to judge the idea. It's, you just have to go, and you have 15 minutes, and whatever you come out with at the end, and it just creates a lot more of a judgment-free zone in creativity, which I really liked, and I will continue to try to work to that kind of point of no judgment, because it's really hard to not judge your work sometimes and be like, why
You're
is
your
this
own
an
worst
idea?
critic, right? That's the way the saying goes, which is, I think, is true.
It's true. Anyway, do you have anything else theatrically, creatively?
No, I think that's it.
Otherwise,
I think
we'll
that's all good.
be rehearsing fairly soon. Like, having another rehearsal soon. We'll probably update you guys on how that one goes.
Yes, we'll do that. That'll be our first in space since the rewrite, and I guess we'll see just how many of these things that we're talking about actually.
Yeah, and we'll probably chuck some stuff up on the Instagram.
Yes.
In relation to that rehearsal, so
keep posted.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. If you want to, we have some extra stuff to talk about today as well, as always.
Yeah.
So if you're on Spotify and could jump over to the YouTube channel. We said it last week, but if you didn't listen to the last episode, that's totally fine. But the YouTube channel has the full extended version of the podcast, also videos of us. Yay! Hi, we're waving to the YouTube audience. How's that? So if you want to listen to more of us, hop onto there. But until next time, we'll meet again. So we played.
Hold up, I feel like we need to be
okay, fine.
welcome. If you just come from Spotify. Hi, you're on YouTube.
Hi, we're on YouTube. Hi, welcome.
Hello.
Look at our beautiful
If you've
face.
been seeing us for the last 20, 30 minutes or whatever, we're sorry.
Also,
we're
hi.
Still here. Hi again.
Still us.
We've had a fairly interesting couple of days beyond just creatively
Creative
doing theatre things.
It's been a fun week. I gotta say,
good weekend.
Yeah, it's been a
we
good
can dox
time.
ourselves. It's the weekend. I don't
It's
know
the
when
weekend.
we're releasing this. It's
This is
the
the
weekend.
weekend.
We're probably
It's the
releasing
weekend.
it.
I don't know. It's one of the weekends.
A weekend.
Yeah. But it's been
a very interesting weekend.
Yeah.
We played cricket.
So
yesterday.
I've been to give some backstory. I've been playing cricket again, which I haven't done in like a decade because my dad wanted to make a team where he and I and my brother can play together because he's a big cricket guy and he was like, I want to play with you boys and we'll do like the lowest division and we'll just play a game. And I was like, whatever, what else am I doing? Turns out many things and could possibly use the Saturdays.
It's fine.
But you know what? That's okay. Well, even then it's cricket. But when the season ends, we'll have more time. So and that's been fun time. We've been practicing and getting better, which is fine. And every time we're short, I'll be like, hey, Ari, can you play? Because you play more than me, and you.
I mean, I played last season for the first time in also probably close to not a decade, but 5 years maybe.
Yeah.
But
still, I mean, that's fine. It's good to have you come and play with us.
It's really interesting coming and playing because I've only ever played women's cricket. So I've also only ever played T20, so that's 20 overs, which is.
If you don't know anything about cricket, we apologize. There's going to be a lot of kind of technical talk.
We can talk 20 overs, which is what Big Bash is. If you know anything about Big Bash, it's when they hit a lot of things really quickly.
So, I mean, yeah. If we're
and normally I play that.
If we're talking about the
cricket.
Venn diagram, right, of people who know what cricket is and people who listen to our podcast. This is the distance of the Venn diagram. No, I don't want to make any judgments, but this is a theatre podcast. And the thing is, Saturday afternoon rehearsals are typically the same time you play cricket. I know we've both been there. And I know which one we both chose.
Yeah.
So I know no judgment out there to people who chose theatre over sport. We also had to make those hard decisions of they happen at the same time. So it's hard for us to sometimes choose. And all of our friends did theatre. So. But, so we have new camera equipment because we've upped the quality.
As in we have new camera equipment from last week's camera equipment, which was not
already
good. The new camera.
Which is already the new camera. It's not new, but we have other camera stuff, and it just beeped, and I was like, and I think there must be like a limit on time for when the recording goes. So whoopsie. Hopefully it's not that.
About sense if it was
if it was probably half an hour. I have to fix that for next time. Sorry about that. That shouldn't happen again. But I just figured I'd reference that. This is what you get in the after hours part of the podcast. It's like it's candid, it's chill. So hopefully nothing went wrong, and we still have everything there.
Hopefully the footage is all there. If not, there's two other cameras.
Well,
so one of them will
it's
have
okay.
Something.
We'll figure it out. But anyway, so yes, Ari plays cricket with us, which is fun.
It is fun,
and it's a good time. So. I'm gonna take this, and if at any point you want to interrupt, by all means,
fire away. I've already told the story about 3 times.
Okay, good. So I've been kind of sitting on this for the past it's such a big. So we played a team against the top team yesterday. They were the team at the top of the ladder, and my dad was like, we've had some kind of troubles with this team before. Just be careful, they're not nice people.
And I remember you messaging me and just being like, be prepared.
Just
and
be
I was
prepared.
and I
was
I already have a little bit of anxiety, I think, which is sad that I do feel kind of semi-anxious,
which,
going up against.
I want to talk about that.
Do you want to talk about it now?
Let's talk about it now so that we can finish on a high. Because I was going to say, I'm like, as a primarily femme-presenting woman who plays in a men's league, do you... And I thought this was interesting. Did anyone say anything yesterday to you at all?
Not as much as in other weeks. Like the other two. What is my third game with you guys?
Yeah, probably third game.
I feel like the first and second weeks, I got quite a lot of comments on being a female or little lady or little girl and stuff, and a lot more. There were a lot more vocal about the fact that I was a woman. This team barely mentioned it.
Not even like the drunkards watching or anything.
Oh,
I think
when I went out to bat, I could hear them chatting.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
sort
okay.
There was a few drunk lads on the side that were just sort of a bit.
Which
rowdy.
we'll get to. And
Don't worry, obviously they're gonna make a comment.
Story,
I think because.
But I don't.
It's unconventional. It's not like the reality is I don't know a single other woman playing in this league. I know many. I play in a women's league on Sundays, and I'm by no means fantastic. I am at a very median level in that league, But the fact that I'm playing in a men's league, I think suddenly makes it so much more, it's like a rarity.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of what I've experienced in the last 2 games prior to this one. A lot more chat about that and sort of sledging in a, like, not outwardly meaning to be offensive way, but in an accidentally sometimes demeaning kind of way, where it's sort of like, oh,
like,
okay.
like you wouldn't say that to anybody else, just
you
because
wouldn't.
you're a woman. And like I think that's the question that everyone needs to ask themselves before they say something. It's like, well, am I just saying this because this person is a woman? Which is interesting, but I was thinking about this yesterday, and I was talking to Dad, and he was like, well, he was saying as a middle-aged man that he thinks that most likely nowadays people are more reluctant to say things, especially out loud.
Yeah. I felt reluctant to say anything.
Yeah.
It was like they were just going to ignore it. It was like they didn't want to look at me.
Yeah, in case they get, you know, which, I mean, as much as that isn't what you want people to be thinking, it's still, that's on the way to thinking, because I'd rather someone be scared of saying something and then realize why people are why they should be scared than just be sexist, you know? Because
it's difficult though, because like at the same time, I don't want them to be like
ignoring the fact that I'm a woman. Yeah, exactly.
Also, like, why say anything about anyone? I think that's what they need to check themselves. Like, what are they getting, or like how is it serving them to make a comment on either my gender or ability or anything. Like, they're not going to go to you and be like, watch out for the little man.
Yeah, true.
Like, they're not going to do that. I mean,
look out for the kid. No one said that to me.
Like,
I'm not that young, but I'm much younger than those guys.
And I think they used it, like, even our team used it, I think, to a little bit as like a way of psyching out the opposition. Like, I think I bowled last week. Yeah. And it was sort of like, oh, you wouldn't want to get out to the lady, or I think
the exact phrase was like, it was like they're just stressed out because they don't want to get out to a little girl.
Yeah, they're stressed out. Yeah, careful, watch out! The batsman is stressed out because they don't want to get out to a little girl. Like,
which I was like,
I think it would rattle someone.
Yeah,
but
it would.
At the same time, you're just.
It also
like,
rattles you as the bowler.
Especially when there's like all the children off the pitch. They're like, oh my gosh, the girl's bowling! Quick, we want to watch! Kind of thing. And it's like as if I wasn't stressed enough.
Yeah, exactly. Bowling, which is already terrifying.
I don't feel comfortable as it is bowling.
But I think it's very interesting, and like. Yeah, I mean, you see all those ads nowadays anyway about standing up and not kind of settling for something. And like, you know, I like if anyone had said anything louder than for me enough to hear them, I'd be like, yo, watch yourself. Like, that's not. And even last week, I should like, you know, like we should talk. I mean, especially since it comes from our own team, from people we can talk to. I don't think
any of it was.
But it's not malice, you know.
It was not negative
intention.
in any way. There was never meant to be any kind of hard feelings or judgment, or it wasn't about my ability. It was purely, like, at least from that standpoint, it was purely as a means of using something that they knew would rattle. Yeah. Because little girl is so often used as in like quite a demeaning way, unfortunately.
True. Yeah, that's societal.
And so that's the sad part, to be honest.
I mean, you know, if you were to rephrase it and be like, well, with batsman scared, he doesn't want to get out to a boss ass bitch. I feel like you wouldn't have been as rattled. But I can't. That would have been much better. And then he'd be like, "What the hell?"
You're like, wait, what?
And then it's like dun 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 dun. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting. I mean, yeah, and like it's just a shame that you have to worry about that playing in a men's league in any case. But
I did have my worries about going to play yesterday, especially after you'd messaged saying Dad just wanted you to know that this team is.
Well, yeah, I wanted to know. He said she shouldn't worry about it. She's a smart girl. She'll be fine. And I was like, yeah, you're right. But I feel like I needed to know that. Yeah. So because I needed to know that, you also needed to like not even as a woman, but just as a player in the team to know that like you're possibly playing against people who can be a bit loudmouthed, and that's fine. Yeah. You just need to be aware of that you're not caught off guard when they do say anything, and that's okay. And like that's sport. Like that happens. Unfortunately, that happens, and I just think it's good to be aware.
And I do think it can be very like I get very rattled by things people say just because they can get into your head so quickly.
And there is one thing that I remember someone saying yesterday that we'll talk about when we see the story, which I feel like we can probably go into now. But that rattled me kind of, and I remember it enough that it
there's definitely a few moments like in many games where you just like that sticks with you because you know that's how we are as humans.
But it's about seeing them do that and then proving them wrong, which I guess to segue into the story.
We had a really fun game yesterday.
So we went yesterday to play against them, and I was there a little bit early because Dad's the captain of our team, so we came to for some reason I didn't have a choice in that. He was like, we'll be leaving now, and I was like, okay, whatever. So we got there, and he was talking to the other captain of the opposition team, who is a starring player in this tale, and they were chatting, and Dad came up to me. He's like, well, I think we'll be fine because we'll be okay. He seems fine, and I'm like, no, I'm not necessarily convinced, because when you play the game, emotions get high, and you never know, and that's fine. Like, just to be aware, and so that was fine. So they tossed. I think Dad won the toss, and then we went out to field first. So our bowling was pretty good. I got a few of them out pretty quickly, which was really good for us. Eventually the captain came in, and I think he was like their star batsman, and he was hitting us, and that was when we started he started to hit us pretty hard. So we had someone come in and fill in today who hadn't played for a while, like a family friend of ours who most of the people that we know play cricket because they're all friends with Dad, and they're also everyone kind of does the same things in my family, and then my family friend area. But he came in, young guy, about probably late 20s, and his bowling is very good, probably better than what you would probably expect playing in our league. And he was bowling, and the batsmen were struggling, I guess. And then the captain came out, and he was fine. Like, he was able to hit the balls pretty well. But I mean, he was struggling. And then one of the other bowlers came out, who was, it was a good bowler. He was doing his good job, but he was also a little bit he also hadn't bowled in a long time, and that was with most of our team, they haven't played. But he ended up getting the captain out, which was great. Like, he bowled really well, enough to kind of psych him out and get the captain off, who, while walking off the pitch, just screamed the F word at his...
I know, that was a little bit...
Yeah,
I was
it was
like,
a bit much,
whoa,
especially knowing that, like,
man.
I was like, and I was like, okay, this could... Like, that was me being like, okay, here we go. Now, this is... We need to be careful now, because he was mad because he didn't make a lot of runs, and he got out to a spin ball, which I was like, okay, we'll see how it goes from now. So then we had tea break, and the second half of the first innings was... They hit us pretty hard, and they ended up making a pretty high run score. I think it was 190 in the end, which is really good for a 35 over game. They played very well, and they were good players. They did do a good job. And so apparently, because you were fielding out near them, right? So you overheard. Oh, you can say about how he was complaining about the bowler.
Oh yeah. So old mate captain was very vocal about the quality of our probably star bowler.
Yeah.
And how it was not at the level it should be at our division, and it was definitely, he should have not been playing in our league. Yeah. At that point, I wasn't sure, because I didn't know this person well. I assumed that maybe they were like one of the Div 1 players, because don't you have a Div 1 team?
We do have a Div 1 team, and so
I thought maybe it was a fill-in from there, and I was like, okay, I guess that's like, fair enough, whatever. But it
wasn't. He just hasn't played for a few years. He's a very good player.
Yeah, and that's what I didn't know.
It was just lucky.
So he was very, very disgruntled about the fact that we had a bowler that was so good.
Yeah, and then so they hit us for 190 basically. We come off for lunch break in the middle of the thing, and immediately the captain goes up to our bowler and was like, "Oh, great bowling, mate. Yeah, you did a really, really good job." And I glanced over at Ari, because you had told me when we were switching over, we were doing one of the overs, that apparently he's a bit mad. And he was like, I tried to look you up on my cricket, and you didn't show up. And he's like, oh yeah, sorry, I haven't played for a couple of years. I'm kind of out on the game. And I was like, that's really funny. And I was like, oh, the duality of man, isn't that hilarious? And I'm like, that's fine. If you're gonna talk bad about people, do it behind their backs and be nice to their faces. And
I thought it was really interesting how nice, because I was sort of listening and going, gosh, he's really salty about this, and like. I was giving him the benefit of the doubt from the standpoint of like, what, I'd probably be a bit frustrated if we had
absolutely.
You don't want to be facing someone that's hurtling 100 and goodness knows what.
I did think it was funny how he literally said, oh, that's the kind of balls I want to face. Playing like as a batsman, you want to get balls like that because it challenges you.
Why isn't he playing Lock 1?
I don't know. Well, we'll see why. But anyway, so. I thought that was a funny little thing, but yeah. So the bowling was fun, but he didn't even get out to him. That was what I thought was really funny. Was that he was complaining about his bowling, but he got out to probably another bowler.
That's why he would prefer, batting against pace. I mean, I would prefer batting against pace.
Yeah,
anyway.
sure. Everyone would. Everyone would.
What? How do I play this?
It's hard because they're so unpredictable. Actually, I was talking to my dad about that. I've talked about that as soon as I get into this. So the second half of the thing, we go out to bat. And my dad bats first. He's like the star batsman of our team. Gets out for 1. He gets bowled for 1, and then a second best batsman gets caught for 0, which is really bad. And my dad was saying on the way back, he was like, it's happened to me twice now, 2 weeks in a row, where he's like, the bowling is so, because he's so used to playing, because he usually plays Div 1. He's so used to bowling being on the pitch and good, per se, better, I think. I'd say good. These bowlings weren't terrible.
Great.
He's not used to slow bowling and bowling that is not on the pitch, so it kind of catches him off guard, and then he gets out. And I was like, yeah, you have to, because the thing is, if you're just basically training at the bowling machine or with people who can bowl, you're only ever going to know how to face balls like that.
That's
like
true.
There's the saying, right, that the best swordsman in the world shouldn't fear the second best. He should fear the person who's never picked up a sword at all. Because the person who's the second best swordsman is trained in the same arts and you know how to fight against. But the person who doesn't know the strategy is unpredictable and you don't know how to fight against that. So
That's true.
I think that's something to learn, that you should never underestimate your opponent. Anyway, so we were kind of on the back foot from the start of the second innings. We weren't sure really where we were going to go, and we had to make up some runs pretty quick. But we ended up doing so, and we were kind of just playing the long game, playing it consistent. We had a couple more wickets, which wasn't very good for us, but we realized very quickly that we just needed to hit the ball. And our star bowler, who also happened to be our star batsman, ended up retiring.
Star player.
MVP, ended up retiring with 50, which is great, which is the standard.
You have to retire.
Whenever you hit 50 runs, you retire. But if everyone else in the batting team gets out, he can come back in.
Yeah.
So that was good to know that he was there as a reserve just in case he needed to come back. Well, we got up, and after tea, we were at a higher run rate, or higher runs than they were during their tea break. We were like, well, this is good. We can kind of make up some runs. We can see how we can go. Of course, the second half of our batting lineup isn't as strong, probably, as theirs was, which is okay. But we were going to have to make some runs somewhere. So we went out and we started dropping some more wickets. My brother went in. My brother's 3 years younger than me.
I was going to say, it might be worthwhile saying, like, we had 10 overs to go and we needed something like 60 which is a pretty infeasible amount to be getting without hitting several boundaries per over. But it's manageable, but it's challenging.
Yeah, it's manageable, and it's challenging, especially considering that the people who were in batting were basically, the next up was you, me, and my brother, and the three of us who aren't necessarily the strongest batsmen, especially when it comes to hitting boundaries, and that's just the way it is. All three of us are probably not the best, and my brother was bumped up because he hasn't faced a lot of balls, and the last time we batted, he came in and then I got out, so he never got to face a ball, and we all felt bad for him. So I was like, you can go before me this time so that you can face some balls. So eventually he goes in to face, which is good for him. I'm sure he was fun facing probably the best bowler that they had.
No, second best, I'd say.
Probably second best.
Yeah.
Either way, one of the better bowlers they had, and he was bowling kind of no balls. He was bowling. It wasn't bowling great.
No balls. He was bowling really well.
Oh, he was bowling good.
He was bowling really,
really well. He was bowling really well,
and
my brother was struggling, and that's fine. Like, that's going to happen. But at the end of the over, eventually he got out, and that's happened sometimes. But what you...
It happens sometimes, yes, people do go out.
No, true, yeah. This is life. But you were saying that apparently they would...
I think the issue with unfortunately what happened was, so he faced a whole over of dot balls.
Which is what you want
it's
what you want as a fielding team.
Yeah. Which is, really hard as a batsman to be standing there and not able to hit anything, and, especially against one of their stronger bowlers, hitting it's hard anyway. But so he'd faced pretty much a whole over of dot balls and then got bowled. But sort of the attitude towards the bowler, rather than being celebratory, like as this is as a fielding team, congrats, you just bowled someone out, well done. It was more like, why did you go and do that? We want to keep him in.
Because he can't hit.
Which runs. Is really offensive to the batsman. I understand the logic completely, and yes, it is completely valid logic, but I think there's a difference between sort of like, inwardly going, oh, actually, probably, it would have been smart to leave that person in, or quietly among the team, rather than sort of, going up to the bowler and being like, dude, what was that for? Which is
really kind of disheartening, especially considering this is the first time he's ever faced cricket. Basically, he's ever faced a ball, and he was really kind of excited to go out today and see if he can try and hit a ball, and he didn't when he wasn't able to, and then to have the opposition toy with him like that.
Yeah, I don't know how much he heard, but it was.
But either way, like, he was upset. Like, and for every right, he has every right to be upset. And I didn't know that they had said stuff like that, and I wouldn't have stood for that. That's not cool. That's not sportsmanship. That's really that's quite mean.
Yeah. Although I mean, it does happen. Like,
it happens.
Is a very common.
Yeah, it's just
but that had
I feel bad for him, and when you're listening to this episode, brother, I'm not going to say your name because I don't want to dox you, but
I mean, it's not.
It doesn't really matter, but. You did well, and
I agree.
Harry also thinks you did well. Everyone thought you did well, and you shouldn't feel so hard on yourself. They were mean people. But anyway, so at this point in the game, I guess apparently their higher division team didn't play, or maybe they did play and then they came after the game. So a bunch of their supporters had shown up.
They showed up like halfway through the game.
Yeah,
they
so
were
halfway
there,
through, yeah, and they were chatting and
in.
yelling and doing the kind of the classic like, "Oh yeah, mate, you better win." They're cricket players. Yeah, it's fine. It's the way it is. They were kind of cheering on their team who we were playing against, and I think that was the shift in the game when, like, especially considering that we were struggling for runs and we needed to kind of make a comeback here, and the opposition knew that it would be hard for us to do it, so they started to kind of play to their audience, if you will, which is fine. So my brother gets out, and I switch with him, and I go in, and then it's you and I. And you and I are out in the pitch. You've been there for a bit, which is good. You've been doing well. You've been staying in. I know you were a bit worried about.
I don't think I faced any balls.
Yeah, which is fine. I mean, that's okay. But
you know.
we went in, and we had, I think it was 2 overs left to make. I think it was 16 runs, or maybe probably 20.
2 overs was like 30.
2 overs for 30 or something,
which is quite really radically impossible mathematically.
Which is quite unreasonable. So the first bowler comes out, second last over, and he bowls. And I hit one boundary, and then we did some runs, and when we realized pretty quickly that they were just going to let us run because we were the last 2 batsmen before our star batsman came back in. So they wanted to keep us in so that he didn't come back in and hit him for 6, which is fair. Like, that's a smart thing to think about. But we realized that if they're not going to run us out, we can just keep running. So, we should have realized earlier, but that's okay.
We realized pretty quickly.
I think we realized pretty quickly, and so that's a smart thing to do on their part. That's a good play of, like, if we're gonna if they're gonna get out and then their star batsman's gonna come in, they're gonna have a better chance of winning. So we're gonna keep them in, and we won't run them out. We'll just let them go. But I think you have 2 of the brightest minds of that team, probably of the world, possibly batting against each other.
Whoa! You just have 2 ordinary human beings. Average human beings.
You have 2 people who just, out of pure luck,
realized, hang on a minute.
If they're not going to run us out, we can keep running, because if you get out through a run out, you'll keep the runs. So we were like, well, we could run 30 and win if they don't run us out. So it's either they have to run us out or we win the game. So we did. We just kept doing that, and our umpire, who was on our team, because we don't have umpires in our division, it's just people on our team, was like, just keep going, like, force the run out. And we were like, yeah, actually, let's do that. So they did that, and there was a little bit of, like, confusion from some of their team because sorry, I completely forgot. So this last over that we then started to do this with, the captain decided to bowl because his friends were kind of egging him on to, and he was like, oh, this is the last over.
You're jumping around the story a lot.
No, this I feel like I've gotten to the...
Okay.
I am. Okay, this is kind of all over the place.
Your story takes 20 minutes. My story takes 2 minutes.
Yeah, okay. Mine is long. So anyway, he was bowling pretty badly. Usually over his 6 balls. Every time you bowl what's called a no ball, which is above the waist, or a wide, which is where a batsman can't hit it because it's too far left or right of the pitch, an extra ball gets added to the over, and a run is added to the opposite to the batting team. So there's a couple of no balls going, and at this point, you and I were just like, well, as long as we hit the ball, even if we don't hit the ball, just run. At least get 1 or 2, and in sometimes cases even 3 of easy singles. So when we just kept doing that, and while we were running, there was some confusion from the opposition because they were like, well, why aren't we running them out? And the captain who was bowling was like, just keep them in. So we just kept going. But then eventually they wised up and were like, well, next ball, they're just going to run and keep getting runs. So we'll have to get somebody out. So while I was running stumps, I didn't even see the stumps go. But the stumps go, and that same fielder who said that I hit the dead ball so it wasn't a dead ball goes, you're out, by the way, you need to go, she's staying. And I was like, that's fine, whatever, even though I'm almost certain that you were running to the stump.
I was running to the bowling end, and the bowling
and I was like, look, I'll appease them. I was in the back of my head, I'm going, great, they underestimate Ari. This is going to be so beautiful when she goes out and like not hits them for 6, but so I switched now with our star batsman. So it's Ari and our star batsman in to kind of finish off the game. You were facing, right?
Yeah, and so their intention was to not have me. Yeah. I'm gonna talk for a bit because I feel like you've been talking for like totally half an hour. And also like for a very long time, and I feel like I can wrap this up pretty quickly. Sorry, Aaron, I'm not having fun. So
you're not having fun?
No, I'm not making fun of you.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, I'm like, this seems pretty fun.
No, it's great. So their intention is sort of like, all I'd have to do to win the game essentially is to make 1 run, because that means I'm off strike, so I'm not hitting the next ball, and the person who we know can probably hit boundaries will be facing the ball. And their logic was, I won't be able to do that, but Aaron could have been.
Yeah,
so
true.
that's why they sent him off.
But I think not only that, but I think they could have been either of us, but I think they were more confident bowling you possibly than me per se. Like, let's say, because that what could have happened was
more confident.
As in, like, so let's say if I go out and you're on strike, if they bowled you out, they win. If they got you out,
right?
They win.
Yeah, but in general, like that wasn't. I don't think that was even part of their intention
Okay,
because we know he wasn't a bowler. Like
True,
his ability
point,
to bowl
point.
me out was
That's
like very, very low.
Yeah.
He's like their intentions purely were she won't be able to hit the ball.
Yeah.
Because prior to that point, I'd barely faced anything yet, so they hadn't actually seen me play.
True.
I'd faced one ball, made a single, and that's all they'd seen.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd just been running for you basically, and then running off no balls or whatever the heck we were running off of
running
at that point.
literally anything.
So their logic purely was she's not going to be able to make a single.
But there was 3 balls left, and we had to make.
Needed to make 14, I think, or something.
No, I think it was maybe. I think yeah. Sorry,
because it was a no ball, 2 sixes, and my single.
Yes,
that would be
true.
14.
Yes, yeah, true. So yeah.
So
you go out to strike.
They were basically fielding like if anyone actually watches the cricket, like the Australian team in a test when England only needed whatever, basically like.
Very close.
Like, within 5 meters of me, kind of. With nobody on the boundary and nobody sort of any further out than 10 meters. And so, our batsman who's coming in was just like, it's okay, you got this. Me internally, like, having a meltdown.
Yep.
Like, you just have to hit it over their heads. That's all you have to do. Or, like, somewhere in a gap. Pure grace of God, some miracle, managed to somehow make the single.
Yep.
So he's on strike, and you can finish the story.
Okay, so he's on
pretty
strike.
Much done.
And I'm off at this point. I hadn't even taken off all of my pads. I was just standing there so excited to see the end of this game. And I was like, he's just gonna hit him for there's 2 balls, gotta make I think it was at that point it was 13.
Mm-hmm.
So he bowled 1 no ball.
Swing and a miss.
Swing and a miss, which is fine. Well, so it was no ball, so it was a run to us, so he had to make 12 off 2, which is 2 sixes. Oh, sorry.
Mm-hmm,
yes,
that's right.
Yeah. But no, he had a 6 and then a no ball and then a 6.
Yeah.
That's
correct.
So he's on strike. The guy bowls, he whacks him for 6. Immediately 6 runs. Great for us. The next ball was a no ball. Swung, missed, doesn't matter. We got a run and an extra ball. So he had to hit a 6 for us to win off the last ball of the game. Sorry, the camera did the thing again because I waffle all over the place. But hopefully you can follow this. But anyway, so 6 runs off 1 ball. I'm so excited. I was like, he's going to hit him for 6 and we're going to win. And then there was this guy that was fielding near us and he's like, yeah, he could get bowled. And I was like, first of all, ball is not very good. Second of all, yes, you're absolutely right. He could be, but why am I gonna think like that? What am I gonna do? Think like that? So last ball happens, whacks him for 6, and I was like, and we were all really excited, and we won the game, which I thought was really good. There was a bit of grumbling from the opposition going off because apparently Captain Bowler Man said that the scoreboard wasn't updated, so he thought that there was more runs, and so he was kind of taking the piss, which is not an excuse in my opinion. It's a kind of a thing you say when you lose and you're grumpy about it, which is fine. And like, I mean, they had every right to be grumpy, but I don't know. To me, the way in which that last over went showed a lot of kind of just bad sportsmanship, which is where, I don't know. It's just like you're trying to throw a game almost, or like, but even then, like based upon how serious they were taking it, maybe I'm underestimating them. They were just kind of rattled by the fact that we outsmarted their outsmart, which I don't know if they were expecting per se, which is fine. But yeah, it was a really satisfying win because we were able to kind of show them that, hey, look, if you lay up for even a second, that's like asking for a loss. And it was really, really well. And I mean, and I don't like to wish ill upon people. I think it's mean, but all of his friends that were there watching their opposition play, I just really hope that they got a bunch of shit from those guys because of losing, because they had come and they were watching the game and they were cheering them on, and Davo had a bowl and then lost the game for them. So, I mean, there's some part of me that's like, that's such a sweet taste of revenge.
As the angel on the shoulder, I hope that they learn a lot from that game and realize that, like, underestimating, and also, like, there's a way to go about winning a game, and that probably wasn't the best way to go about attempting to win the game.
Yeah.
And they could have done a lot of things differently.
And
but
also,
hey, now they know, and honestly, that's the best learning experience.
And to lose like that, and I'd be like, well, wow, you guys really kind of pulled that out, didn't you? But instead to be like, oh, the scoreboard wasn't updated, or to kind of grumble and complain, it shows kind of it shows bad faith, which is a shame. But that's okay. They played very well. They were very talented and skilled players. So it was satisfying to win like that.
Very satisfying. Very interesting. An experience that I probably will never ever have. again.
No, I don't think anyone.
It's
That's such a strange
But
situation. So yeah, hopefully that made any amount of sense.
the 2 minute too long don't read, isn't that a thing?
Too long didn't read.
TLDR.
The TLDR is
I learned that like only very recently. I never knew why people put that at the bottom of things. I was
Really?
like, what the heck is this? And I googled it finally, and it was like too long don't read. I was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. It's just don't underestimate people. We had a really interesting experience with underestimating people, or having ourselves underestimated,
and we were able to
learn from things like that.
So yeah,
and if you didn't understand any of it because cricket is confusing
and I don't know how to tell stories,
40 minutes, I'm sorry.
But yeah, thanks for joining us today. Hope you had fun. Hope that my passion for rambling.
I'm glad. I don't know if you can see Aaron's knees I don't know how much the camera shot shows, but his knees have been like. I mean, they're always like that anyway. But yeah, they were very excited telling the story, so I felt like I should just let you go for as much as possible.
Thank you.
So yeah, I'm glad you had such a good time playing cricket and telling the story.
Thank you. I needed this.
Yeah,
I needed to document this because I've been on this like victory high for the past like 12 hours, 24 hours. But anyway.
Anyway, I don't think we have anything else to add to this episode.
I feel like
out for quite a long time.
We should end it here, but thanks for joining us. Hope you had a good time. We'll see you next time.
Catch you later.
Alligator.
Hey, we got it.